Good evening and welcome to the news today. The father and brother of Tel Aviv shooting perpetrator Nashat Milham were released to house arrest today after they were detained on suspicion of being accomplices to the gunman. This comes as new details emerge of the week-long investigation which led security forces to the northern Israeli city of Arara, where Milham was found and killed. I-24 News correspondent Eli Ochenberg has the story.
It took a full week for the Israeli security forces to get their hands on Nashat Milham, the Arab Israeli who murdered 3 people in Tel Aviv on New Year's Day. The lengthy manhunt involving hundreds of soldiers and policemen, which spread panic throughout the country, ended in Milham's hometown of Arara in northern Israel.
We end 8 days of attrition, arrests, raids, media pressure indicating Nashat was indeed hiding here, which took a huge toll on everyone here, fearing he might act again. We didn't want to see the affair end with his killing. First, because Nashat was a sick man, and we also wanted to hear from him what were his motives for carrying out the attack.
And the motives are indeed a huge part of this affair. The fact Milham was an Arab Israeli with full citizenship has raised a heated debate over the question of dual loyalty in the Arab sector in Israel.
Anyone with eyes in his head knows there are large gaps between the Israeli Arab and Jewish public, resource gaps and gaps in law enforcement, gaps and discrepancies in right obligations. These gaps formed during decades, and it's the time to make a major national effort to reduce them.
Meanwhile, a Haifa court ordered the release of Milham's father and brother after they were arrested last week on suspicion of aiding Nashat after the fatal shooting. There are still many loose ends on the before and after of Milham's attack. But perhaps the more difficult questions are the ones that were raised during the 7-day manhunt, such as the police capabilities, the vision of both the Israeli and the Arab Israeli leaderships, and social gaps and divisions. It remains to be seen if any of these questions will be answered before the next national crisis.
And with me right now here in the studio, Amir Oren, defense and government analyst for Haaretz daily newspaper. Good evening.
Evening, Lucy.
And also Gonen Ben Yitzchak, former Shin Bet agent. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. I will start with you, Amir. The latest, let's say, things that we're revealing on this case are surprising or not surprising so much?
Well, they're embarrassing because, as you remember, over the last 8 or 9 days, Israeli public opinion has shifted. First, it was bewildered. Where is Nashat Milham? Then, all of a sudden, it turned out that the Shin Bet and police were closing in on him, found him, and killed him. So everybody was so happy,
living
yes, of
happily
course.
ever after.
And then it turned out that they could have and should have found him much earlier. And perhaps part of the explanation is that the police has been reorganized over the last 4 or 5 years. The police district, which used to be the northern district, has been split into 2, the coastal district and the northern district. Now, rather than keep all of the Arab towns and villages under one single district, with one single authority and some knowledge base, it was split, and the Wadi Ara area was given to the Haifa and Hadera district, the coastal area. Apparently, and there was between the district commander, who is no longer there, he is missing, and the police stations, there was no other chain, no other link in the chain. Apparently, this created havoc. And the fact that Milham was there for 5 days, people knowing about him, he went out for cigarettes. He smoked a certain brand of cigarettes, even if there was surveillance on the groceries there. For whoever bought this sort of cigarette, this brand, they would have found him.
I wanted to, I saw one of the reports going in on Friday on Israeli Media Channel 2, and, they spoke about the fact who he was, from which family he came, and everybody were talking about the fact that his family was called the family who was cooperating with the Shabak. And it was with the Shin Bet. And, it was kind of maybe obvious to start looking at his own house. If everybody's pointing towards this house, if everybody's pointing towards this family who is cooperating with the Shabak, how come nobody's looking at the family's house?
Of course, I need to say I don't know all the details about this event, but I do know, and this is not the first time I say it even in this studio, that one problem is that the attention shifted even within the Shin Bet from the human intelligence into other means of intelligence, including the SIGINT and so on. So when you don't have eyes and ears on the ground, it's a problem, and I think
that was one of the worries when the Shin Bet said after the northern branch of the Islamic movement was taking out, that was part of the reasons that the Shin Bet said this is not a good step for Israeli intelligence in the first place.
I don't know, but maybe because they knew that it's a problem, and also, of course, because today when youngsters within those villages, their movement is no longer illegal, it's really inspired them to go into terrorism. Adding to that, all the Daesh idea, the fact that people are sitting on Facebook, Twitter, and all the social media, and they get these ideas, and we see what happens. And I think that the Shin Bet needs go one step back into human, and one step forward into going deeper into the web.
It's amazing what you're saying, because the father at the same day came out to the media and said one of this. I didn't notice this only on Saturday. He said, I am working in the system for a long time now. I know what is going on. I am calling my son to come back. So working in the system, these phrases are yes, phrases that certain people are using them, yes, and only people who are working in the system can use the word system, basically.
But he was depicted as a volunteer with the police. There was a very thin cover. A
volunteer in the police that has weapon in his own house.
But and
he gave like a big clue to all the security services. Come and look here. Maybe he is around.
But and Gonen knows it much more than the two of us. Sometimes even the agent you run, sometimes even your source turns against you for various reasons. Pressure is being brought to bear on him. Perhaps someone in his family is being abducted and held at the threat of death. And even when Gonen goes to meet his agent, one he has run for several years, one he trusts, all of a sudden he could pull a gun on him.
There are some movies about that.
You never know. It's a very dangerous business. And the fact that his father was part of the system does not mean that any son who might rebel against his father wouldn't take his weapon.
What are the chances that that was maybe one of the scenarios, that basically the son rebelled on his father's, let's say, daily job routine or daily system?
Well, it could happen. Again, I don't know the details, but we need to think about this father that knows what are the sequences of what his son did, and he knows that the life of his son are threatened right now by the Secret Service or the Israeli police, and he needs to choose between the Israeli law and his son. And I think this is a terrible decision and a terrible choice. We never, he was released today, meaning that he didn't help his son. I guess that if during his interrogation within the Shin Bet they would found that he helped his son, he would be kept in prison.
From your point of view, and I'm finishing with that, what are the chances that the details, the actual details, the real details of this specific story will be out at the end of the road?
I think that truth has some kind of nature to come out, and it will come out, but this goes back to Amir. I think Amir has the
if we won't have any gag order on it.
In 3 weeks' time, some details, perhaps personal details having to do not only with him but with others involved in the case, will come out.
Yes, gentlemen, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Thank you.